أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jumma Mubarak to each and every one of you, and welcome to the Brampton Islamic Center on this wonderful day of Jummah, of course. As we begin, just make note that we have the donation boxes coming through on the sisters and the brothers side. As always, we ask that you be generous with your donations, given the daily, the weekly, and the monthly activities that we have going on within the mosque. Of course, you can always give your donations through the gift point on the wall as well, using your credit card. As well, we always encourage everybody, if you can, as well to visit us online at bsia.ca. That's bsia.ca, where you can give your donations online as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just 1 second. As always, we ask that you remember in your du'as all those that are sick, the weak, the needy, the elderly, all those that are suffering around the world, of course. Our dear sister Gracie Hussein, our dear sister Azamoun Bakas, sister Shami Azad, Hajjun Sharfan Khan, our dear sister Nazarene Ali, our dear brother Imran De Freitas, sister Isha Ali, sister Anis Hassan Kaja, our dear brother Mobin Udan Hassan Kaja, sister Zaifa Muhammad, sister Jamila Ali, and our dear sister Momin Ibrahim. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy on them and restore them to the best of health. As well, always remember in your du'as all those that have passed away around the world and going through hard times, of course. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all those who have passed away and grant them Jannatul Firdaus, the highest of paradise. Now, as everybody knows, Ontario is now or started phase 2 of the reopening plan, as we'll say, from an economic perspective. What does that mean for us? It means somewhat increased capacity of attendance within the mosque. And of course, we still have our virtual online on the YouTube channel. And as always, we encourage everybody, if you can, to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Brampton Islamic Center YouTube channel, as well as sign up for the newsletter at bsia.ca, so that you can get the weekly updates in terms of the programs within the mosque, of course, and what's going on. As well, of course, we encourage all of you to register online to attend Jummah if you plan to do so. And so increased capacity within the mosque, which means, of course, the parking lot, for those of you that are in attendance, will become more full now, if that's the best way to say it, moving forward. So with that, if you can, come a little early, but be courteous with your parking. If the parking lot is full, of course, find other means of parking, whether it be along the road, but do not be rude in the sense that you're parking in our neighbors' parking lots. So be courteous, be gracious, be polite with your parking as well as your attendance within the mosque. And what I mean by that, of course, is respecting the volunteers that we have within the mosque who are helping us and guiding you in terms of the entrance and the exiting strategy, and taking the information as you're coming into the mosque from a registration process. And so with that, in terms of registration, just a reminder to everybody that registration does open every Wednesday at 2 p.m. The first Jummah, the doors open at 1:15 and close at 1:40. And then for our second, of course, the doors open at 2:30 and close at 2:45. So that's just a reminder to everybody, number one, to register online to make it easier, of course. We need to know who's coming and who's exiting, as well as the times in terms of coming to the mosque. And for those of you that are online, of course, following the khutbah, you can pray your Zuhr prayer at home. And for those of you that are attending the mosque, we ask that you pray your sunnat at your home once you return to home. We need to clear out the mosque as efficiently as we can, of course, for a couple of reasons. Of course, we have the second salah, but of course for sanitization reasons as well. So just make note of that as well. So following Jumma Salah, if you can kindly just exit accordingly, and we'll help with the exiting. We ask that you don't block the doors when you're exiting. We try to do one row at a time, maintain order in terms of a line, maintain your social distancing. We have the garbage bins there as well, where you can dispose of your white prayer mats as well as the bags that you have for your shoes. So just make note of that as well. So as we're exiting, just maintain social distance and order as you're exiting. So with that, I can see our Imam and Khatib is here, of course, our beloved Ayman Tahir. So with that, I will turn it over to him. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر
Standing.
الله أكبر
Can you check if it's okay now?
الله أكبر
Or if it needs to adjustment?
الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا لا الله أكبر. الحمد لله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا الحمد لله غافر الذنب وقابل التوب شديد العقاب ذي الطول لا إله إلا هو وإليه المصير اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك لك الحمد يا من لم تتخذ ولدا ولم يكن لك شريك في الملك ولم يكن لك ولي من الذل والله أكبر كبيرا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله الأحد الفرد الصمد الذي لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد مالك الملك يؤتي الملك من يشاء وينزع الملك ممن يشاء يعز من يشاء ويذل من يشاء بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير سبح له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم له ملك السماوات والأرض يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن وهو بكل شيء عليم وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين تركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك شرح الله له صدره ووضع عنه وزره وأعلمه أن مع العسر يسرا وأمره إن إذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي المقصرة بتقوى الله وأحذركم ونفسي من عصيانه ومخالفة أمره لزوما لقوله الحق تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون وكذلك في قول الحق تبارك وتعالى يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا اتقوا الله فإن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكارى وما هم بسكارى ولكن عذاب الله شديد. My brothers and sisters, I would like to start my Jum'ah khutbah in an unusual way by acknowledging that this land we are living in right now has been for many thousands of years the land of the inhabitants, the first inhabitants or the indigenous people, the Huron and Wendat, the Seneca, the Mississauga of the Credit, and the people of the Turtle Island. By acknowledging so that this is a land of a people who used to live before us thousands of years ago, I have chosen, like many others, this Canada Day not to celebrate and to consider this day as a day of reflection, a day in which we need to examine the past, know what we're doing to fix at the present, and what we hope to see in the future. And in today's khutbah, and this is the whole purpose of doing khutbah, is to raise the awareness and to stand for justice. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kunu qawamina bil qist, as Allah Azza wa Jalla have commanded us to do so in the Quran. And we need to acknowledge the problems that are existing within the indigenous community. And when we do so, we need to talk about colonialism. And when we explore colonialism, we will be able to understand so many things. Why the situation of the indigenous people right now is so critical, why there is an inequity and injustice that is exercised against the indigenous people nowadays, whether in the health system or in the educational system, or generally speaking, as the perception of the indigenous people in the community or in the society, in the Canadian society, has always been negative. And it would also help us to understand what is happening right now in Hayy al-Sheikh Jarrah in Palestine, in Al-Quds. And if you are following with the NCCM, the National Council of Canadian Muslims, 2 days ago they sent out a call to every Canadian to send a message to the Prime Minister of Canada and say to him, take a stand, speak out about the injustice that is happening right now in the Hayy al-Sheikh Jarrah, the suburb of Al-Quds, which is a close by and adjacent Hayy to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Speak against the cleansing and the unjust and brutal treatment that the people of Palestine are getting as a result of standing up for their rights. When we go back in history, we will see that the colonialism ideology, which is primarily based on hierarchical culture and supremacy, have come to this land with the perception in their mind. The first settlers, meaning to say, with the perception in their mind, they are so superior to the native inhabitants of this land. They have the right to kill and cleanse the land from the first inhabitants. They used brutal force against them. Many thousands were killed, and I was astonished and surprised and saddened at the same time to understand what the first settlers have done to the first nation of this country, to the first inhabitants of this country. Not only that, after they made mass killing and murdering and cleansing to the land, the native or the indigenous people were pushed to live in segregated areas that are called reserves. that does not have the adequate resources to help them be able to connect with the land and live their normal life. The perception the first settlers had and promoted is that North America is a land that has no people. Despite of the fact that the native of this land, the first inhabitants of this land were living in a civilized life. They had established civilization. They were trading with the first settlers who came in, and the first settlers relied on them in trading. But these facts are not presented to us, were not taught to us, were not presented to the surface, but rather the negative perception about the indigenous people is always promoted. And if you're like me, have watched the cowboys movies, we've seen on these movies how the indigenous people were portrayed, unfortunately, as being savage, as murderers who are attacking the first settlers, the colonialists who came to help them establish their life in their own lands. Distortion to the fact, distortion to the perception, to the facts, and changing the perceptions. Mass media have played a big role to hide so many facts and to promote, unfortunately, so many lies that we are unaware of, and as time goes by are being popped up to the surface to make things even worse. The colonialists have created what's so-called residential schools, whereby the indigenous children were forced to leave their homes and study in a very inadequate environment in which the basics of living were not met. The malnourishment, the harsh treatment, the purpose of these schools was nothing but to assimilate the children of the indigenous people to come offer that servants for the white settler or the colonist who is controlling the resources of their land. These are the facts that we're not aware of and we're not taught. Not only that, these schools were used as laboratories for different medications and for different treatment styles without the aware of the children, and many, unfortunately, as we are aware and as now the numbers are popping up to the surface, many were killed as a result of that. The 761 mass grave that was discovered along with the first one that come before it, the 200 something, is a clear indication that there has been injustice done to the indigenous people by those who have the ideology, they carry the ideology of colonialism in their mind, seeing themselves as being superior and belittling others around them and spreading rumors and racial comments and discriminate against people. Look into how Islam have prohibited these practices when Allah Azza said to us in the Quran, Ya ayyuhan nasu inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila ta'arafu inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most conscious among you are the most pious to Allah Azza wa Jal. You're all equal, you're all the children of Adam. And that's why Quran teaches us, لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى يكون خيرا منهن. Do not belittle others around you. Do not spread the rumors. Do not discriminate. Do not racialize others around you. They could be better than you. Now, let's contrast the impact of colonialism on the indigenous people living in North America and see what is happening to one of the most precious lands for the Muslim Ummah in the land of Palestine. The colonialists or the occupiers who have come and occupied the land of Palestine in 1948 promoted through the mass media that we have people with no land are coming to establish livelihood in a land that has no people. A big lie, a big lie that cannot even fly further. The Muslims, the land of Palestine has been a Muslim land for hundreds of years. And Muslims who are living in Palestine were living in a civilized manner and had a civilization. And it is the perception of this colonist or the occupier who have come to the land of Palestine, destroying 417 almost villages and expelling over 700,000 Palestinians to parts of Palestine and the surrounding areas. After that, to establish what is so-called the State of Israel. Shame on the international community who have accepted this practice of colonialism, who have accepted this practice of prejudice and injustice, and they have accepted the practice of cleansing of the Palestinians from their own lands. We're seeing now the tragedy continues in the Hajj Jarrah, which is, to those who do not understand the term in Arabic, is a region, a suburb area adjacent to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa in the municipality of Jerusalem, in which some of the Palestinians who were expelled after the 1948 war were settled in that region. And legitimately, through the Jordanian government who was supervising that region, were given homes to live in. And unfortunately, after the 1967 war, the Israelis have used their own brutal force to expel the Palestinians from their own lands, including some of the people who are living in Hajj Jarrah. And one would be wondering, what is so critical about this region, or what is so critical about this area, when we know that there are many areas were taken from Palestinians in the land of Palestine? What is so critical about that if the Israeli government were to take that part of the city, then the whole city will be collapsing in the hands of the occupiers? Then Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa will be threatened. Then the identity of Jerusalem as a Muslim city will be lost. The same perception, the same ideology, the same strategy, the same work of the colonialists historically has been exercised in the land of Palestine, promoting lies. And unfortunately, mass media also have played a critical role into making this not easy to the Palestinians and make it much easier to the occupiers or to the Israelis to be able to implement their agenda. Mass media has always portrayed Muslims in general and Palestinians who are standing for their own rights as terrorists, savage, similar to the image we have seen portrayed in mass media about the indigenous or the first inhabitants of this land. What is making the difference now, walillahi alhamd, is the new generation. And wallahi, I have belittled myself compared to those young people of male and female standing day and night in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and the surroundings of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa in Hajj Jarrah. I salute Muna Kurd. I salute Muhammad Kurd. These names might not be familiar with you, but go online and Google them. Google them to see what these young people, 20 years old, or in their early 20s, have said in front of the TV cameras, were interviewed by CNN, were interviewed by the majority of the journalists or media in the world, and have said the things that none of the Muslim Ummah leaders have said. I saluted them and I say to them, may Allah bless you. May Allah give you the strength, because what you are doing is saving and protecting the dignity and honor of the Muslim Ummah. If it was not to these young people and to their phones and to the social media, then unfortunately Al-Masjid al-Aqsa would have swallowed by the Israeli occupation. Jerusalem's identity will be taken away and will be gone forever. It is these young people who have made the change, and it is our responsibility to do something to support them. All they're saying to us is, we don't need you to come and be with us on the land. We will be standing here. All we want you to do is promote the haqq, promote the truth, promote the what is really happening on the ground using social media. I used to be proud of CBC, one of the local formal channel of media in Canada, and lately I have changed my perception for the ugly stand, and I do say it clearly and bluntly, that media is doing and taking and standing when it comes to Muslims. When it comes to Muslims and the standing of the Muslim children in Palestine, they're always promoted as terrorists. They're always promoted as savage. And when it comes to the brutal aggression of the Israeli force, which is the largest fourth force or nuclear force on earth, they're seen as people who are miskeen. They're trying to protect themselves. Shame on the international community for taking a double standard. Shame on them by promoting Israel as an equal power to the Palestinians who have been in Gaza living under siege for 17 years. And the reason why they've been living in siege, under siege for 17 years, is because they have chosen to elect a government that they want to govern them. But this government is not accepted with the superpower on earth, who is backing up the Israeli government and always using the veto to abort any resolution from the United Nations to condemn the actions of the Israeli in Palestine. This is pure colonialism. This is pure discrimination. This is pure racism. And it is about time that the mass, everyone like you, especially the young people, take the action and stand up to defend the rights of the indigenous people and say to them, we're behind you, we're with you, we understand what you have been subjugated to, and we acknowledge it, and we're here for you to help you be able to go back to normal life. We need to remove the perception that is the label that is being placed on the forehead of the indigenous people as being lazy people, drunk people, as people who are addicts. They don't deserve the life. We know this is something that's popping up once in a while in the media, and we know the inequity that the indigenous people receive in the healthcare system. This has to change. This has to change because we're living all together in this beautiful planet that is called the earth, and it's our responsibility to spread the justice and to stand for each other. And it's also the same thing to be said about what is happening in the land of Palestine. We need to stand up for justice. We need to speak the truth. We need to promote the truth and fear none but Allah Azza wa Jal. This is only one life. We live it. Let's live it with integrity. Let's live it with the haqq, so that when we meet Allah Azza wa Jal, we'll say, Ya Rabbi, we have done what it takes to stand for those who are have been subjugated to injustice in their life. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فيا فوز المستغفرين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا وسيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. A call from me, please be more active. NCCM is alhamdulillah an organization that have taken it upon itself the responsibility to stand up for the rights of those whose rights are being undermined, whether it is the Muslims in Canada, or whether it is, as they have stood up for the indigenous people, or whether it is to the Muslims outside Canada, because we need to stand by an organized entity to be able to fight for our rights. Islamophobia is also another form that is stemming from the colonialism, the mentality and the ideology of the colonialism that have destroyed the perceptions. We are suffering as a community from Islamophobia, whether it is the Quebec massacre, or whether it is the London massacre, or whether it is the incidents that we continue to hear once in a while, unfortunately almost on a weekly basis, about a Muslim or Muslimah, primarily females being subjugated to racial comments and attacks. Islamophobia is real, and Islamophobia is a form of colonialism, or the impact and as a result of colonialism. We need to stand up. We need to use the mass media, because we cannot rely on the mass media to promote justice. We need to use social media, and I urge the young people to use this powerful tool. You spend a big amount of time on your gadgets, doing useless things, playing games or chatting for useless things. Use your talent, use your time to promote the haqq, to stand for yourself and for others who are undermined around you. In conclusion, we are only a few days away from the days of the Hajj, the most powerful days of the whole year. ما من أيام العمل الصالح فيهن أحب إلى الله من هذه الأيام. No days of the whole year good deeds are highly evaluated by the mighty Allah Azza wa Jal like the days of the Hajj. We're talking about days that are more powerful than Ramadan. We're talking about days that can make or break. We're talking about days that we can surrender and submit to Allah Azza wa Jal for so many reasons. To cleanse our sins, to come closer to Him, to ask Him for rahmah. I can't imagine how we're gonna be able to live our life after the tragedy of London. Personally speaking, I have been thinking twice before I take my children for a walk in the park. We are living in a very difficult situations. We need to turn to Allah. We need to supplicate to Him. We need to ask Him for empowerment. We need to ask Him for help. And the days of the Hajj are the days in which the mighty Allah Azza wa Jal made an oath by وَالْفَجْرِ وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرٍ هَلْ فِي ذَلِكَ قَسَمٌ لِذِي حِجْرٍ. Allah Azza wa Jal made an oath in the Quran by Salat al-Fajr. وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ, referring to the days of the Hajj. والشفع والوتر, whether it is referring to shafa and watr salah, or whether it is to يوم العيد and يوم عرفة. والليل إذا يسر, and the night when it goes away, referring to the last third of the night, referring to الثلث الأخير من الليل. هل في ذلك, is there indeed في ذلك قسم لذي حجر? Let's contemplate and reflect on these ayat. And let's be ready for the first 10 days of the Hajj to live the same lifestyle we live in the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan. Let's get to know the Quran, open the Quran, have multiple khatma if you are able to. Fast these days, because fasting is sunnah. Do not miss if you're unable to fast the 9th day, which is the day of Arafah. And also be mindful of the more powerful day than the day of Arafah, which is the day of Eid, which is the day of Al-Qurbani. If you're planning to, inshallah, do a Qurbani, then you would be exercising the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by holding from cutting your hair and nail, so that on the day of Eid, when you do your udhiyah, you will be able to go back to the normal life, similar to those who will be going to Hajj. May Allah make it easy for all of us to be able to make it in Hajj in the days of the Hajj. Allahumma ameen. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك اللهم على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم إن عبيدك أبناء عبيدك يا رب، أبناء إمائك نواصين يا رب بيدك، ماض فينا حكمك، عدل فينا قضاؤك. نسألك اللهم بكل اسم هو لك سميت به نفسك، أنزلته في كتابك أو علمته أحدا من خلقك أو استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك بأن تجعل القرآن العظيم ربيع قلوبنا يا رب العالمين، اجعله جلاء لهمومنا وأحزاننا. اللهم إنا نستغيث بك يا الله، اللهم إنا نستجير بك يا الله، اللهم أنزل علينا رحمة وبركات من عندك يا حميد يا مجيد. اللهم بلغنا العشر من ذي الحجة يا رب العالمين. اللهم عنا فيها على الصيام وقراءة القرآن والصدقة. اللهم ووفقنا لأن نضحي لك يا رب العالمين. اللهم يا رب السماوات والأرض ورب العرش العظيم، ارحم المسلمين في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها يا رب. يا رب ارفع الظلم عن المظلومين. اللهم انصر أخواننا المرابطين في بيت المقدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اشدد على قلوبهم واشدد على أيديهم واربط على قلوبهم في حي الشيخ جراح يا ربي. يا رب ثبت أقدامهم. اللهم وفقنا وأعنا على نصرتهم فإنك على كل شيء قدير. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأقم الصلاة.